Good morning. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good few weeks off from the course and you made some good headway on your assessments. Congratulations on making it this far through the course already. So we're down one unit, which is fantastic. Hope you found it okay. So we're getting into the swing of things with the Cert 4 now. And this next unit really does pick up from the previous unit. Before we do that, okay. So now through to the end of January, we'll be doing the BSBITU401 design and develop complex documents. So specifically looking at the Microsoft Office suite of applications, so the Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft Publisher. So before we start with this new unit, I'll put your minds at rest first. So we've got two webinars before Christmas, so that's this week and next week. So next Thursday will be the last one for the year. Then we'll have the big break. So all of us will take a bit of leave over Christmas, and we will resume on Thursday, the 10th of January. So so next Thursday will be the last presentation, and then there'll be a break, and then back on the 10th of January. So not only is it a time to have a bit of rest and recreation and spend time with family, etc., it will give us an opportunity to finish off any outstanding assessments that need to be done and completed. It'll also give us a chance, if you wish, to get a little bit ahead on this next course, but yeah, it's completely up to you. I'll let Ray talk to you about that and what needs to be wrapped up from the previous assessments. We also have a slide at the end of the presentation with just some key dates for the college, specifically talking about if you do need any support over the Christmas break, just getting those requests in time so that it can be addressed before we go on the leave. But that'll be the last slide today. I'll show you that. So yeah, hopefully you can enjoy some downtime over Christmas. But yeah. Okay, so we haven't actually got Ray with us yet, so he might pop into this presentation a little bit later. So so normally Ray will give some feedback in this particular slide here, but like I said, I'll hopefully he can slip in a bit later, and we'll just cross over to him when he joins in. So yeah, so today we're going to be looking at the element 1 of BSBITU401. Sorry, we've just got some more people joining in here. Hello there. Yeah, so today we're going to be looking at BSBITU401, so design and develop complex text documents. So prepare to produce word processed documents. So specifically, these are the elements that we'll be looking at. So this is all part 1 of your of Catapult. So we'll be looking at these elements. Today it'll feel a little bit light on in terms of what we're really going to start going into. So it's really just an introduction, and just bear in mind that the course is designed for people who not necessarily have ever touched a word processor or, very, very limited exposure. So some of it might feel like quite a bit basic, but trust me, it does start to ramp up when we start looking at things like macros and potentially software such as Publisher, which a lot of us would never have touched just because of its purpose. So we will move through into more complex type stuff, but today is really just an introduction to it, you'll see what I mean as we go. So we'll be looking at functions within Microsoft Word, and next week is when we really start to get into it, and I'll bring up a document on the screen and do some live manipulation of the document, just showing you some of those functions. But today isn't like that. On that, some of you are probably experts in things like using macros and using some of the functions within Word that your everyday person that just maybe have monthly or whatever access to documents or don't play with stuff too much. So if you have got some tips, please send them through by email or chat, whatever you want to do. So if you've got some tips that can help everyone out, please do that. So this unit is designed around Microsoft Office. So I think Ray sent out an email. I know I sent one out a couple of weeks ago asking to make sure everyone did have Microsoft Office on their computers. I know some people use Apple's like I'm using right here. So hopefully you've got Word or Office for Mac installed, because it won't make a great deal of sense without having Microsoft, as you'll see as we go through. So so if you've got any questions about that, please send it through. This actual unit has a number of different versions, which you can match to the particular Office package that you got. Like, for example, I'm on Office 13. I think some people have got Office 10. Ray will send those out, or you should have it already. And if you don't, please let us know as soon as possible what version you've got. Okay. So some of the concepts, material, wording will be familiar in this unit to the last unit, and it might feel at times like we're covering a bit of old ground, but that's done to reinforce things, and it's quite common in vocational training. So for example, you'll hear things like doing things in accordance with your organisation's requirements. There might be stuff about work health and safety, environmental considerations, those sort of things. So any of you who have recently done like a Certificate 3 or whatever, I know it's a bugbear of students that always say in the assessments or whatever, it's like, oh, they've asked that so many times already. So it's done for a reason, and it is to reinforce stuff. So just it is what it is. So just so please just bear with it and go through it. If you're covering it again, it's hopefully it's going to stick. I remember in the disability Certificate 3, it was duty of care. It just came up time and time and time again. There was always in the assessments there was always a question about duty of care, and you sort of felt like it was wearing a bit thin. But once I got into the industry, you realise, this is why we need to hit this home a lot. So, but anyway, enough on that. You'll see what I mean as we go through. Okay, so we'll move into the actual material for today. Hopefully it won't take more than half an hour or so. There is a bit of reading in the catapult. So make sure you go through that just to have a look at a bit more depth about some of the descriptions of things. So I've only really lightly touched on a lot of descriptions here in this presentations, but there is more in the online material. At the end of the presentation, I'll just touch on some of the the formative assessment tasks on there, just to give you a bit of a pointer there. So, and hopefully just harking back to the previous unit with the assessments, it was great. We got a lot of feedback from students on different questions, and a lot of people asking, what does this mean, what does that mean, and hopefully the answers we gave were good and got you on the right direction. So in this unit, I'll try and make sure I can hit those things at the end of each of our Zoom presentations with a couple of pointers for those assessments, and hopefully that'll help you out. Okay, so safe work practices. Here we are, WH&S always again, to ensure ergonomic work, organisation, energy and resource conservation requirements are met. Okay, so ergonomics is, if you haven't heard the term before, is the study of people, the relationship between people and the tools of their occupation. So in particular, it's looking at the physical interface between the worker and the way they use the tools of our job. And for us in business admin, that's all the office environment. You can think straight away, computers, workstations, photocopiers, all these sort of things, scanners. So focusing on the physical interface, the factors do affect worker performance and health. So the design and layout in the office and our workstations is the most critical role in eliminating postural problems and other sources of injury, like injuries to your limbs and the RSI type things, and eye problems, headaches, noise, temperature type stuff. Musculoskeletal injury and visual fatigue are the primary concerns associated with the computer workstations. I know I've been doing a great deal of work on the computer recently, just with uni assignments and whatnot, and I'm really starting to feel it. So obviously I've got a bit of work to do in getting my workstation set up a bit more. But these are the primary concerns with the workstations. So when it comes to organisations, so that's why, and we need to have, so all the workers need to have a good knowledge of health and safety and the legislation, policies and procedures when operating our equipment. And again, sort of going back to that previous the previous unit, when we talked about finding things that are wrong, finding things that could be done better, finding things that can improve business and indeed improve safety is what we're looking for. So there's no point seeing a hazard and doing nothing about it. And especially with WH&S, just spending 15 minutes looking around your workplace, and you probably identify a few things which could be done a lot better and can get ahead of the game in terms of mitigating risks that may turn into something nasty later on. So when it comes to working safely, the statistics indicate that there's about 300 workplace injuries every day, which is kind of surprising. I was a bit surprised when I read that and had a bit more of a read. and what was probably more alarming, and definitely haven't seen it in the reporting in the news and whatnot. You see the odd incident where someone was killed, but this year alone, there's been 119 people die in Australia at work, which is I thought was quite interesting and a bit scary. And when we look at the injuries, there's a link down there to Safe Work Australia. I had a look at the pie chart, and a quarter of these injuries come from people within business, admin, management, these sort of things, like public sector type jobs. So it was quite interesting, and just shows that there's a lot of work still to be done. We're obviously in a much better place than a lot of countries, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of work to be done. So that's why a well organised and well laid out workplace will help us to work efficiently in the office environment. So especially, everything should be organised to facilitate workflow and decrease risks of injury. So we can't actually, sorry, just letting Ray in. Hello, Ray. Yeah, so there is a lot to be done, and it's not like we can turn up to work with, covered in armour and in a bubble, and just making everything as so that there's absolutely no chance of us getting hurt, because nothing would get done. So there's got to be that balance to meet the organisational requirements and your outputs, and do what you got to do, but doing it smart and making sure everyone's educated in WHS procedures, so that if people should be able to be comfortable to if they find something wrong or a potential hazard, that they identify it, get something done about it and report it. I'm just going to, now that Ray's joined in, I'm just going to hand over to him to have a bit of a chat about the previous unit. So where we're at with that. So looks like a lot of people got some great work done. So just a bit earlier on for you guys that just joined us a bit later, I just spoke about the Christmas break and when the college is going to be standing down and going on leave, and what opportunity that might provide to get things finished off before we start back on the 10th of January with this unit. So Ray, can I just get you to jump on? And
hello, you can hear me?
Yes, got you, Ray. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, basically, most of the people who are enrolled in the course are actually on target. Those of you who are not, who probably listen to this YouTube webinar later on, try and do your best to sort of catch up. The next unit should have been sent to you. If it hasn't, it's probably because I've not received the email from you regarding whether you've got Microsoft Office Word 7, 10 or 13, which is what I need to know to actually enroll you actually into this. If you think you've got time over the holidays or whether to do an extra unit, or you want to get this done, then just let me know as soon as possible, and then I'll enroll you into the next unit. But I'm pretty happy the way this program is developing. It's good to have the actual feedback as well from students. I think in future what we'll do is we might have a study class scenario as well, where we just do some more interactive work, just as a sort of final review of the whole sort of subject. So all the best with everything, and keep up the good work. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, so yeah, so we're just talking about the it's everyone's responsibility to be able to identify and do something about hazards, and especially the reporting to keep those statistics down in in your workplace. And if you do have a look on the Safe Work site, just out of interest, you'll just see the incredible cost that there is when it comes to injuries in the workplace, with compensation, rehabilitation, those sort of things. So for you who are potentially looking at getting into your own, starting up your own businesses, your own companies and things, this is obviously going to become extremely important and a big consideration for you. So yeah, that last point there, the bit of planning and potential small layout of money. So things, there's quite ingenious little ways to be able to prevent things that happen. So it's like the whole scenario, like if you cut your finger, putting the Band-Aid on, like, you don't want to be putting the Band-Aid on. You want to be making sure there's no opportunity to cut your finger. So same sort of thing, a bit of planning. Those of you who may have been involved with people like occupational therapists coming into workplaces, and just some of the things they can do are amazing to help with rehabilitation, but not only with rehabilitation, but preventative type stuff. So yeah, so a little bit of time can yield a lot of benefits. Okay, so we're just moving on to the environment. So again, with like WH&S, like, it's responsibility of everyone, not just in our workplace, but really on our planet, to conserve our resources wherever we can. So ways we can do this in the office, in the home, or whatever. So conserving resources, so power and lighting, switching off power and lights when they're not required. Organising your workplace to maximise natural light instead of a electric light. Putting things in power save modes. If we're having to print rough drafts of things, like reusing paper, or potentially doing 2 pages per page, or 2 slides per page, those sort of things. Printing in draft quality, or not even printing at all when you're reviewing things. Previewing your work before you're printing it. I know I'm guilty of doing that before. I've sat there and looked at a document so many times and thought it was all good, and printed it off, and then realised there was one little typing, spelling mistake, and my OCD doesn't handle that well, so I have to go and destroy another tree to print it out again. So not very efficient. But double-sided printing, and when you're photocopying, doing those sort of things. So anything to minimise wastage, and again, think about this from not just from a conservation point of view, but a cost point of view. It makes sense to save money, and especially if you're going to go into your own business or have your own office to do things. It's not hard. Just takes a little bit of work on your behalf. Now, before you get really scared about this slide, I'm drawing on my. This is just for information only, but this is just speaking to power saving. So I'm drawing on my experience as an electrician here, when I used to actually go and do things like energy audits in houses and these sort of things. And so just read the slide. Don't worry too much if you don't really understand it. We'll just sort of talk through it briefly. And the only reason I'm doing it is, it'll help. Like if you're working in an office and you're aware that there are big bills, so that money could obviously be allocated elsewhere. So not just from a conservation point of view, but from a cost point of view, and where that money could be reinvested into your business, or in the case of doing this at home, like I encourage you to do this at home. I do it for friends all the time, and I do it in my own place. So I'm just going to give you a very quick example, and like I said, feel free to try this at home and just see what you can find, and pretty much guarantee you'll find some way of saving some money, and using some equipment in your home a bit more efficiently. So I'm just using a basic example of a 60-watt light globe. So that's just your standard light globe that you see. You drive past down a street at night, and you'll see probably half a dozen of them just sit like glowing away in people's doorways. So a 60-watt light globe, and if you look at your electricity bill, you'll see these terms, kilowatt hours, and these things on there. And this is where we'll relate it in. So a 60-watt globe sitting on for 24 hours, which does happen. People go away on holidays or whatever, and especially in offices, you see these things happen. So a light will be left on 24 hours or so. If we just said, yep, it's on for 24 hours. So that equals 1.44 kilowatt hours per day of electricity usage. So if you have a look on your back of your electricity bill, you'll see this number, which may not mean a lot to you, but hopefully after this it might. And that's how much that globe has used for the day. Now, if you look at your home electricity bill, you'll see that the average Australian usage, a daily usage, I think it's for 2 people or 3 people in a home, is between 12 and 16 kilowatt hours a day. So if you just had that light sitting on at home, you've pretty much used 10%. That's 10% of your daily usage has done nothing. So if you convert that to a dollar figure, which is what we really care about, most of us, it's 50 cents a day just to have a light sitting on. So if you think about that, and you go, that's not that much, but that's $180 a year, $900 every 5 years, so it will add up. So it's kind of a canned or extreme example sort of thing, but hopefully it just shows you about energy conservation. So there's things in your home and in the office that will just sit there and chip away at your power usage, and and if you have got massive bills and you can't understand why, it might be a good opportunity to get someone in, an energy auditor, just to come in and have a look and see where you can save money. So the bottom point of that slide, before I move on, because this is just for information, the water boiler that most of you have probably got in your offices or your places of work, they're 2.4 kilowatts. And if they're copping a bit of a hammering, like they do during the day, lunchtime or morning tea, afternoon tea, they're boiling a lot. So they're constantly boiling. So if you work that out over a day, the bosses would probably freak out when they saw how much that actually costs them in electricity. So, so there's a lot to be said just for a kettle, because if the thing's just sitting there boiling all day and all night and all day and all night, it's chewing away on power. So anyway, I've gone on enough about that, but hopefully that's been a bit of a interesting slide for you, and it does relate to what we're talking about here. Yeah, so have a think about doing the audit of your office or your home, and just see where things you can might be able to help save the environment and help save money. Air conditioning is another classic one. Uses a lot of power, and people leave the air cons on overnight. Things like that. Hot weather, especially with daylight saving on really hot days. Consider closing your curtains and your blinds before you go home at night, those sort of things. So it's not rocket science really, it's just a little bit of thinking proactively. Ergonomics, so we spoke about ergonomics a little bit earlier, so we're just going to quickly look at the computer workstation, which most of us spend a lot of time at. So there's several factors which will affect our performance and health. So the chair, so we need a chair that's easily adjustable and can provide good support to your back, your lower back especially, and up and down movements for your proper height interface. Our posture, which mine at the moment isn't too flash because I'm sitting on my lounge at home, but it should be at right angles. It should be how it is in that picture. Nice at right angles, the elbow, hip, and knee. So again, this is designed to stop the fatigue, that musculoskeletal fatigue that we talked about earlier. Footrest. I know that. I know my wife's got one of these at work, and I was surprised how she said how much of a difference it made, because it didn't seem to be. I thought, well, how does that affect anything? But it actually. Sorry, we just got someone else joining in. So I was surprised how much that actually that helped. So if your feet don't comfortably reach the floor, considering getting one of those. The keyboard support table, to support your upper body posture. Document holders, a great idea. I think I should invest in one with the amount of stuff I'm doing at the moment. Adjustable for that angle of tilt to the same height, so you can, if you're looking at something the whole time, stop those small subtle movements between the screen and the table, screen table, considering the weight of your head. I don't know if anyone's ever looked into it, but how much your head actually weighs does put a lot of strain on your neck if you are moving backwards and forwards between a screen and a document. Keeping the monitor at a good distance from the eye to the screen. So it talks about distances in the notes. So I'll let you guys read that in your own time. Lighting is a big one, and glare. So thinking about where you're going to have the screen positioned, reducing the glare with there's some pretty cool little filters that I know we used to have in our offices, which were really good and noticeably reduced the glare and the fatigue on the eyes. Little things like tilting the screen can help. And then the actual environment itself, so the temperature, so keeping the temperature and the humidity and noise all at the right level. And again, a workplace audit could solve all this and or capture all of this and do come up with a whole bunch of recommendations, which if your leaders and managers were smart, they'd actually implement these things, because it's not only helping you, it's helping them. So so I know one office I worked in, they came through and did this, and I know one person ended up with a standing desk just because of the nature of their job was and his particular the condition his body was in. He needed to stand up to be able to work, and they got that, and it was absolutely brilliant. It worked really well for him. He still uses it this day. So it does look a bit odd walking past an office and seeing someone standing, but hey, whatever works. Okay, so moving on to the next two. So looking at document purpose, audience, presentation requirements, and organisational requirements for text-based business documents. So for you guys that have come in a little bit later, I'll just quickly mention that this you'll see a lot of terminology. You'll see principles and concepts that have been covered in the previous unit. So and that's all done on purpose. With vocational training, it's all about reinforcing where we can. So you'll see some things here that may look a bit familiar. And today we're really just touching on what the next few lessons are going to start getting into, which is going to be quite a bit more in depth. So this is assuming this is like a very, very entry level into business admin and for people that have pretty much hardly touched computers. So just bear with us and come along for the ride. And I guarantee you that in the next few weeks you'll be learning a lot about some pretty cool things that Microsoft Office can do. So with Office, so the software applications are program. You can produce documents of all kinds. You know, we've got it's a computer suite. It's got various programs with a range of undertakings. So we've got spreadsheet programs, presentation programs, word processing, database programs, and various other tools. So when we're given the task of creating documents, we've got to ask ourselves, you know, what program are we going to use to create it? How will the information be organised within the document? How will it be formatted? Who's going to read it? And then deciding what we're going to use, you've got to consider the required outcome. Is this document going to be used again? Is it going to be published? Yeah, so and what else is going to be done with the information? So typically, if there is some sort of report done and there's some great information in there, a step might be within your organisations. They go, right, we've got to get this information uploaded onto a website, or hey, this is really important for all of our workers to know, and if we email it, we're not really convinced they're just going to read it. So how about we turn this into a presentation? So yeah, what else is going to be done with the information? So hopefully most of you have used Word. You might not have used a great deal of it, used it a great amount of time, but yeah. So Word is, as the name alludes to, the emphasis is on the Word content. So writing letters, resumes, and reports, study papers, and those sort of things. Organisational requirements. We hear this a fair bit in this course. So and organisations got their requirements of presentations of documents, and that'll influence the decision on what software is going to be appropriate. So an organisation that does a lot of publishing and creates a lot of flyers and these sort of things might have a heavy focus on Microsoft Publisher. So in my previous role, we had quite a lot to do with Excel, like just the basic functions of Excel, collecting statistics and those sort of things, as well as Word. So for me, you know, mainly Word and mainly you know, Excel, and not so much exposure to Microsoft Publisher. So hopefully your organisations have got manuals and procedure handbooks with guidelines for formatting, style, and layout, and how to actually use those different applications. Yeah, so they might have preferences for what they might want to use. So, for example, you know, Word, the file is a document, so it's a written document concentrating on Word, and it's got the extension doc. Brochures for those who have seen it. So Microsoft Publisher has got, so if you see a file with .pub on it, that's used for flyers and brochures and things like that. And then Excel, which is obviously a pretty clever little program, and it's got the files in there are called workbooks, and they have the file extension .xlsx. So hopefully those terms aren't too unfamiliar with you. And like I said, we'll be looking at going into these quite a bit more in the coming lessons. So we're approaching the end of the presentation, but so we just got a couple more points to look at. So when we're looking at how to design and lay out documents, you've got to think about what complex functions you'll use to enhance the document and fulfill the requirements. So Microsoft Office has got a plethora, you know, heaps of different things that can help you do shortcuts, help you be more efficient in creating your documents and spreadsheets and whatever. So there are things called macros, and you may have already heard of them. You may not have heard of them. You may use them every day. So macros are like an instruction that initiates a series of additional instructions used to simplify a task that is used often. So if you're doing something repeatedly, it can help do that. So macros can be assigned to a shortcut on a keyboard or an icon on the toolbar. We'll start looking at macros, I believe, next week. So don't get too worried about that at the moment. But they can be useful for things like putting in symbols, images, tables, creating lists, headers and footers, and automatic functions and things like this. So again, it's one of those things I think we spoke about in the last unit about even though it's there, it exists. It doesn't mean you have to use it. So especially as you're first being introduced to something, it can seem very complicated and everything. But if you are doing things repeatedly, and there are ways to get around and make things a bit more efficient and quicker. So macros is one of those things that can do that. Okay, so going on to long documents. So you'll see there's a few terms here that you would have been looked at in the last unit. So indexes. So indexes, like at the back of a book. If you've got a long document, you may need to have an index. In Microsoft Word, there are functions in there that will help you automatically create an index. In a table of contents, there are again, there's ways that you can get Microsoft Word to be able to automatically create a table of contents for you as you're going along with tied into headings and styles and things like that. So page breaks and section breaks are definitely something that if you're creating complex documents, which is obviously what we looked at last unit, using page and section breaks is something that you'll hopefully you've already seen, but we'll go more into that. Headers and how they can be used to have different headers on different pages. Word, there's functions within Word that help us to do that, and putting page numbers and those sort of things on there. Styles. So you probably see this every time you open a Word document. You'll see there's a whole bunch of buttons there, and it's got different styles. And if you're like me a while ago, you just sort of look at it and go, "Oh, what's that about? I don't know." But once we start looking at that, you can see that can be these can be quite useful, so. Especially if you are doing a lot of headings and subheadings and if you're constantly going select, bold, underline, center, change font size, these sort of things. If you're doing that regularly as you're going through your document, we'll find that actually we can set up a style button to do that for us. So lots of little clever things in there which aren't too complicated to help us efficiently and neatly get through a production of a long document. So and with styles, there's several reasons you can use it. For consistency, makes things easier to modify, it's efficient. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're using the heading styles, that can help inform your table of contents. Makes things a bit faster and uses the program more efficiently. Okay, so a few key points from today, and these sort of speak to the assessment items in for this first section. So your first formative assessment. So in the workplace, have a look for potential hazards and ways you can improve the overall layout. of your work area. So even just look around and, you know, pick some things and go, I think that could be laid out better, or that chair's rubbish and it keeps falling off, the armrest is loose, those sort of things. Think about the resource conserving practices, and again, have a look in the office and just go, you know, have a look at a few things, make a dot point, give it to your boss even, and say, this is, I think we can save money and resources here. Like, we're always printing these things and leaving it in an in tray. Why can't it be emailed? Yeah, changing basic things like printer settings to draft if you're going to do those sort of things. We briefly touched on what programs create documents, spreadsheets, and brochures. So Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft Publisher. We talked about macros and the and what they can be used for. Like, we didn't go into the actual using them, but we just talked about what they can be used for. And we also touched on styles and the benefits of using styles. Okay. Now, as promised before, okay, yeah, there's our objectives from today. You can all read that. So moving forward, so we've got learning support materials. So on Catapult, it's part 1. The formative assessment activities. So I just touched on them and the key points then. So should be quite quick and easy to get through those ones. If you got any questions, please keep doing what you've been doing and send us your questions. It's been really good. I think it's worked well. Hopefully you've found the turnaround time on those emails appropriate and helpful. So yeah, just keep sending any questions through. The next session will be next Thursday, and I'll just talk about, in a couple of slides, I'll talk about the stand down period. So yeah, 10 o'clock next Thursday, and then we're going to start looking at designing complex documents. So there's a fair bit in element 2. So we'll see how we go. We might actually end up splitting that into over 2 sessions. Okay, we'll just see how we go with that. Okay, so yep, part 1. And again, like Ray said, if you haven't been put into or enrolled in the e-learning Catapult for this particular unit yet, please let him know, and what version of Microsoft Office you've got. So as you can see, mine is 2013. So if you've got 2010, you'll get one that's got 2010, and that's just to make sure that the material makes sense to whatever program you're using. So yeah, part 1, and there's activities 1 to 3. So you can see they're pretty short, pretty easy ones for this week. Okay, so yeah, the Christmas break, woohoo! So the college is going to be shutting down a bit as of next Friday. So, and the staff will be back on the 7th of January, and our first session will be on Thursday, the 10th of January. If you're going to be on holidays or whatever, obviously don't sweat it. We'll keep sending out the webinars. The material will be there. Just as long as you've got access to email and things, you can ask us the questions and things. But if you were planning to do any stuff over the Christmas period, if you want specific material, or you've got questions so if you sort of have a bit of a look ahead, if you're planning to do some stuff, have it sort of skip ahead in the module and just see if there's something that doesn't make sense. Ask the questions and we can forward it to you, because yeah, there'll be no one here from the 21st. And so we say, please send any requests for information by the 18th, just so we know that we can get that information to you by the Friday when we all take off. Okay. So thanks so much for your attention today. I hope you had a good couple of weeks, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy this nice, wet and cool weather while it lasts, and yeah, speak to you all again soon. Thanks for that. Take care. Bye.
Hi, Paul.
Oh, yeah, you're going. You're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's it going?